Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Dealer Insights podcast, where we go under the hood, bumper to bumper, and just about everywhere in between, discussing topics important to dealers of all types and sizes. Your time is valuable, so thanks for riding along for this episode of Dealer Insights.
Welcome back to Dealer Insights. Today, well, it's a big treat. You guys, special guest, perhaps somebody that we'll be able to encourage to be on Dealer Insights with a little more frequency. We'll just have to see. But today, I want to introduce you to somebody who is not a stranger to the car business, but Mr. Josh Sack from Strolid. You might not have met before. So, hey, Josh, welcome to Dealer Insights.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Yeah.
For sure. So before we get too far down the road, tell the audience a little bit about when did you get into the car business? I've known you for a long time. We've been friends for a long time. But for the audience, when did you get into it? And I know this, but share a little bit about the fact that you've gone from retail experience all the way into service provider. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I started with the Bernardi Auto Group back in 1998. Came in as a salesperson. Went in for an interview, was handed a stapler and told, sell me this stapler. And I guess I did a good enough job because they hired me there on the spot. I was a young 22-year-old kid looking to light the world on fire and sell some cars, which I must have done okay because I worked there for pretty much my entire retail automotive career. I was a salesperson, sales manager, BDC person, BDC manager, moved in as a BDC director, and then an internet sales director managing internet leads from a sales desk with a team of about 14 people. So I was with Bernardi Auto Group till about 2011. So I've been in automotive for 25 years now.
Wow. So I thought, just because we've known each other for a bit, that you'd been in this 15, 20, but 25, doesn't it just creep up on you? You're like, what?
It does. I was just doing the math today when we were talking and realized it's been 25 years.
It's amazing. Well, congratulations on that. That's that's a significant accomplishment. I will tell you, and you've heard me say it before, I think it's one of the, maybe one of my favorite elements of Strolid is how much retail experience exists and was injected into, well, does this make sense as a business model instead of just helping, a couple of dealerships where these people reside and they do their thing, Vinny with Group 1 for so many years, you with Bernardi, now you're helping like hundreds of dealerships with those kind of same principles that you learned on the retail side, which I love that. It must make you feel good that it's like, man, look at what an effect we're starting to have. And you guys just keep growing like crazy.
Yeah, every year we look back a little bit and where we started and where we are now. And we have this little joke that we say, if we knew what it would have taken to get here, we may not have done it.
Yeah.
We're here and we're growing and we've done really well. And I think we've grown at the right pace, which doesn't always happen, as we all know, in automotive. We're pretty proud of that, the level of experience for our dealerships and their customers as well has been really what we focused on.
Yeah. Well, hey, for the audience, we're going to talk a little bit about service BDC with Josh today, which is kind of an interesting topic, only that I've for a long time loved that you guys moved into being kind of a everything under the tent BDC, sales, service. But I don't know that it makes, to me, that it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask you a little bit about why Strolid decided, or when was that kind of pivot point where it was like, hey, we're doing all this with the sales BDC side of things, but the service department also needs attention. Can you share a little bit about the backstory of like when you guys decided, hey, we got to go service, and maybe why?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had many of our dealers that we're currently working with on the sales BDC side, just asking regularly, asking our team members, asking us in management, asking Vinny, our owner and CEO, hey, can you take on my service BDC? Can you help me out with service BDC? And, we thought about it for a long time. We were referring other BDC companies because we wanted to help our dealers. We just didn't have the means at that time. And it just got to the point where we discussed it internally and said, hey, you know what? we really have the blueprint for this. We've talked about doing it before. It just makes sense to take it on because our ultimate goal at Strolid is really trying to help our dealers out. And we felt like we had enough information and data to be able to say, this is how it should be done above and beyond what's happening in the dealership, as well as what's happening out there all around. Because there are certain things that we wanted to change and we wanted to implement to create a better customer experience and a better dealership experience, because those are really the two most important things to us. Everybody's always talking about customer experience, but a lot of times it's forgotten about what happens to the advisors, the BDC managers, the salespeople when customers walk in and it's not set up properly. That experience needs to be a focus as well. And specifically us not being on site, those are the things we need to focus on when we implement the programs.
Those are great points. Do you find that a lot of your sales BDC customers, that those dealers also end up saying, you know what, we need to go sales and service? And it just makes sense. Yeah. And so they'll end up with you guys with both sides of the coin.
Yeah, a lot of them will start with one or the other. And then they'll just gradually move into the next service, which is either the outbound sales, outbound service, sales BDC, service BDC, because having your BDC, whether it's sales or service offsite, can be scary. It can be understood as or expected as a loss of control. Our goal is to give that control to the dealership through process and making sure we roll it out properly and really set the expectation, not just for the customer, but for the dealership as well. We make sure we have them understand what's expected of them, what's expected of us. And that's what creates a really good working relationship. And that's why the whole, what we call Strolid process, does work extremely well for the dealerships that we work with that embrace it. And eventually, we hear this regularly on my team, on the client success team, which is, I never thought this was going to work. And quite frankly, if I was in the store and somebody told me to bring my BDC offsite, I would be very hesitant too. But now knowing what I know and seeing it work so well and the efficiencies that it brings and the customer experience that can be had, it's almost a no-brainer because of the cost savings and the savings of experience of everybody in the store and the customer as well.
Yeah, I've asked dealerships, especially in the last few years, because the service department has just, really seen a lot of growth. People hanging on to cars, a lot of people servicing before they'll buy. That I've told a lot of dealers, like, hey, you should do kind of your own mystery shop yourself by calling your service department, trying to reach your service advisors at like 4:00 or 4:30, especially like on a Friday. Yeah, it's a nightmare, and that nightmare is cascading into customer experience, as you mentioned, that you don't want to be providing, because it's really one. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I have always thought that providing a bad experience in the service department is actually more lethal than providing a bad experience from the sales department. And I have some thoughts on that, but do you think there's any truth in that, or what do you?
Yeah, there's something to be said about first impressions. So it's why OEMs have the surveys, right? To make sure that they're following up with the dealerships are following up with their customers, making sure that they get in front of any problems that are had. But on the service side, yeah, those customers are returning customers. Sales will see those customers every 3 years, maybe once every 5 years, maybe longer these days, because we know customers are holding on to their cars longer. So that it makes all the sense in the world to really focus on that customer experience and making sure that you're staying in touch with those customers on the service side as well, because they're going to get their cars serviced. It's just a matter of where they do it. It's at our dealerships or somewhere else. And we need to make sure that it's happening at our dealerships.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love to tell dealers, like, why do you want to spend so much money to attract, the potential customer, to get them to a place where they feel comfortable saying, I'm interested in your vehicles, and then win the business, sell them the vehicle, and then when they return, lose them because the service experience was so terrible. Because I feel like if they won your business, you bought the car, and then you give them the opportunity to try to service, and then they lose it there, I feel like that's potentially a lost customer forever, because now you've compromised maybe that trust that the service department builds.
Yeah. Everybody out there these days, more so than ever, is talking about customer experience. You need to focus on customer experience. We focus on, how do we provide a better customer experience? How do we provide efficiencies for our dealerships so that we can create those better customer experiences?
Mm-hmm. Well, that leads me to something I want to dig in a little bit on this episode, where we're talking service BDC. Some of the areas that I think, and you're the expert, I'm not here, some of the areas that I really feel like dealers should consider service BDC. A big one is around appointment scheduling. I know that a lot of dealers use service schedulers, and I know that's probably part of onboarding and getting synced up and integrated with you guys as a service. But in general, can you kind of speak to the importance of the service BDC appointment scheduling and just improving efficiency? Because that certainly does have an effect on the experience provided to the customer, right? Just getting an appointment scheduled.
So there's a couple of things. There's scheduling the appointment, making sure that happens, making sure that the capacities are set properly in the service schedulers. These are some of the first things that our onboarding team will go in and look at. I just recently posted something on LinkedIn because I found something in a couple of our dealerships when I went in and looked, that try and schedule an oil change 3 weeks out. And then I'd call the dealership and find out, hey, you know what? You don't have a capacity for 3 weeks on your website scheduler. Can you take a look? He said, I have capacity today at 3 p.m. So we were finding that the service scheduler was not set up properly. So immediately, those are some of the things that we want to bring to the table and make sure that everything is set up properly, right? Because to schedule an appointment, you have to have availability. So once we get all the technical pieces set up, then what we'll do is we'll make sure that our team is trained on the service scheduler. We work with a lot of the big ones like Xtime, MyKarma. We can work off website schedulers where where they're scheduling out of the DMS that it's not available off of, if it's not available off of something that is not web-based. So we have workarounds for pretty much everything, but it's really important to make sure everything's set up properly at first. So we'll schedule those appointments. We'll make sure that the capacities are set up. We'll go through the entire process. We'll pretty much build out a learning center for our team internally, which our trainers, we have roughly about 8 trainers that will train on these learning centers. And I'll kind of take you through the process and how it works. So our dealerships will sign up with us. We'll check out all the capacities, look at the website, make sure everything's set up. We'll send them what we call our e-action item form. It's a little daunting because it's 8 pages. And I've had a couple of dealers say, why do I have to fill out this 8-page piece of information, right? Yeah. So I look at it as, this is a learning center for our team. So the minute that they fill that out, it goes into this technology that we built, which is the learning center. It tells them everything from, is there a night drop box? Do we send the customer in to see the service advisor, or are they driving in through the service lane? When the customer calls in and they want to have rims done, glass, body shop, all those kind of abnormal miscellaneous sublets that are looked at, we want to make sure that we know where to direct them and make sure that if they're a heavy duty truck store, a service store, can we service 250s? Can we service the 350s, the 450s? Some stores don't even have those capacities. They don't have the lanes or the bays to be able to do those. We need to be able to convey that to the customers and make sure they understand the availability as well. Make sure that if we are booking out long in advance, we need to make sure that we let the dealership know that those capacities may be filled, and they need to maybe open up those capacities as well. We have dealerships that are finding out that after 3 o'clock, they have absolutely no appointment schedule. That's because a lot of times people start clocking out at 3 o'clock, and the capacities are actually shut off around 3 o'clock, so everyone can get out of there early. So immediately when we have our dealers turn that on and they have the people to work those hours, they gain immediate hours, and it's revenue that could have possibly been lost.
Yeah, that's it's so just talking about the scheduling side within service BDC, there are so many factors, right? So
Oh
many
yeah.
variables.
Yep.
And again, I think it's such a like a jewel in the crown of Strolid that there's so much retail experience with your company. So that's amazing. We're just talking about the scheduling part, and there are so many variables. But for me, I immediately start thinking about, wow, if I'm going to do that, I hope the company that I'm going to use has the amount of retail experience that you guys do, right? That you've probably even heard me say it. I think anybody that's subjected themselves to listening to me more than they should have maybe heard me say that experience is often the biggest differentiating point or the biggest differentiator. And in the case of you guys, that experience to me makes all the sense because you just shared some of the details about how important it is to be in sync with the dealer, and the dealer could have some apprehension about, I don't know, but gosh, I don't know if I would feel any better than what you just described of those different points of, hey, yeah, we have a document, a healthy document to make sure that we're aligned with getting all the stuff right. We're setting up a learning center. We're, the way we're going to communicate with you back and forth. There's just so much to it. So it kind of sets up the next thing I want to ask in this, which is around communication. So service BDC, obviously there's a communication back and forth, sales or service. On the service side, I know that when dealers are especially, kind of struggling to keep up with the phone call activity, that compromises their ability to provide a great experience of just communicating back and forth with a customer around service. Do you guys find that ends up being something that the dealer says, oh my goodness, that just lifted a heavy burden, just the communication piece alone?
Yeah. So that's a great point. So I had a personal experience about a month ago where I was in a shop and I needed 4 new tires for my car. And I went in there and I'm talking to the guy and he's great. He's killing it. He's answering all my questions. Extremely cordial, great guy. Definitely knows his stuff. The phone rings and he says, excuse me for a minute. He picks the phone up and I'm thinking, because I'm a customer service guy, right? I'm a client success guy. The first thing I'm thinking is, oh my goodness, this guy's actually going to take a call and schedule an appointment while I'm standing in front of him, and he's going to blow the whole thing. Well, he doesn't. What he does, though, is he picks up the phone and tells the customer, hey, I'm just with somebody right now. Can you hold on a minute? And puts the phone down. So he goes back into helping me, and he's still doing great. But in the back of my head, as the client success guy, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that guy's sitting on the phone. That customer is sitting on the phone waiting. And it goes 3 minutes. And I hear it ringing back, and he's totally ignoring it. That customer's gone. That customer could have needed a brake job, tire rotation, an engine job. They might have just been someone that might have got transferred over to service and might have been a new car deal. So having the phone picked up by Strolid in between 1 and 3 rings, answering the customer, making sure that we're getting them what they need. If we can't answer a question, we have a direct communication line down to the dealership. We are a Slack company. We've implemented a training for all of our team as well as our dealers when we onboard them. Whereas if we can't get the customer what they're looking for, we're going to message down to the stores through Slack. And someone there, part of the expectation that's set with that service dealer we're working with, is that they're going to get back to us and either let us know the information that we need to get back to the customer, or they're going to take it over. 99% of them take it over because that service director or that appointment coordinator wants that deal, right? They want those service hours, and they're getting back to the customer. I mean, we think about how much business is potentially lost on a daily basis just by the sheer fact of not picking the phone up. Forget about the next step of actually having the person trained properly to handle objections, to be able to schedule the service appointment properly, use the technology and the software, follow up, check status checks, all these little things that go into service on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's so critical. Makes me also think there's got to be probably, I don't know, maybe on a weekly, perhaps a daily basis, amazing opportunities to upsell, cross-sell. Like,
yeah, of course.
can you speak a little bit to, like, do you guys identify some of those things, and how does that work with how you work with a dealership?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because that's something that comes up regularly. So one of the things that we look for, and we'll get into this a little bit. I'm sure you have some questions on this later about reporting, but part of our reporting gives us some basic level of understanding of what are the dealership's capacities. So when we start seeing declined appointments, we need to find out why. Is it something that we said, or is it 9 times out of 10 what we find is there's not a capacity available? I mean, we have some stores right now, just because they don't have the techs available, that are booking out legitimately 3 weeks in advance for an oil change. Some service directors don't necessarily know that. We can let them know. They can open up their capacities when they get to the point of they need to, increase their staff, but they may not know they need to increase their staff. So we'll give them a heads up that, listen, one of your top dispositions that we're showing you are declined appointments. And here's 15 examples of customers who wanted a tire rotation or an oil change, and they weren't able to get in, and they probably went somewhere else. So that's a really important piece, the reporting side, to identify opportunities. So on the other side of that, where we see capacities that are filled and open, I see a lot of messages through our Slack channel to my team, our client success team, saying, hey, listen, I have appointments open for the next 2 weeks. Let's fill the scheduler. Well, we can't fill the scheduler if we're not talking to anybody and we're not getting calls. It may be a matter of they need to up their marketing, offer some service specials to their primary market area, or it could be something where Strolid needs to jump in with our outbound campaigns and start making calls to customers, a list of customers that have, a warranty headlight assembly that's due, or something where, people that, in the last 6 months have rejected work that may need that work done. There's all kinds of outbound opportunities that we can provide, anything from just a simple CSI service call to something that is a very heavy, let's say, frame type of problem, which we know are some of the Honda vehicles that are experiencing right now, where they have a list of those customers. That's a pretty big job. We make calls, and if they have the capacity, then get those cars in and those customers done. Immediate revenue. And everybody loves warranty work, right? Because it's paid for by the OEM manufacturer.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that dealers are putting a proper amount of attention on the opportunities to cross-sell and to upsell out of the service department? I mean, what you're kind of laying out, it's been there forever. But once you actually put something in place where you're actually looking for, you're mining the ground, if you will, for those options to say, like you gave the example of, like, maybe it was a service that they declined previously, but it was one that, they let it go for too long of a period of time, and it becomes something where it's not just, hey, you don't need to do it now, you can do it later. It becomes you need to do it now, or your car's no longer safe. Do you think dealers in that area just upsell, cross-sell, like what would you give them, an A or an F or a B or a C? Like, what is it?
It's kind of a loaded question. So it's tough because there's dealerships out there. I've gone into service departments that are just run like a well-oiled machine, and they do a great job, and the customer experience is great. So there's a lot of dealerships out there that do a great job with filling their capacities, with customer experience. But I'd say for the majority out there, I think that there's always going to be room for improvement. That room for improvement could be huge, or it could just be in little increments, right? And one of the things that we can do is help in small increments, because you're never going to blow up a service department in a good way, right? With increased work, because they're not going to have especially these days with trying to get tax, they're not, and service advisors, they're not necessarily going to be able to increase the volume of work right away. So our goal is to help them slowly, if they don't have the staff right now, identify that they need to increase staff so that they can grow their service department, and in small increments, right? So they don't get overloaded, and then customer experience gets affected. or if they do have the capacity, they got techs sitting around doing nothing, which I don't think there's a lot of going around these days. But if they do have that situation, then we can make a lot of outbound calls and try and fill the bays and fill the capacities with whatever they need. If they want, they got lists of warranty work, we can do that. One of the most important ones these days is just making sure that you're focusing on your primary market area, and making sure that if you have customers that either have, let's say, a prepaid type of service program, that they're actually utilizing it, because there's upsell in there, of course. And then from there, making sure that we're offering, a very positive customer experience, and adding in any other type of work due. When we call the customer, they might have an oil change that's been due and way overdue. One of the things we've heard when we've made some of those calls to customers is, oh yeah, I totally forgot about it. You know what? Schedule me for this time. But one of the things that we do above and beyond what some of the other companies out there do, or even the dealerships alone, is internally, is we will send a text message as well to the customer and just let them know, hey, please call us. It looks like if a service due, we can schedule that at your convenience. And a lot of times it's just the fact that they forgot about it. They get busy in life, everything else going on. More people are working remote. They're not traveling as much. Yeah. There's still people doing that. So what's really important is making sure that you're getting in touch with those customers and letting them know they have that service. That's the easiest service to fulfill.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I love that. That's excellent. I want to go back a little bit. You did mention that you thought I might ask about reporting a little bit more. I do want to ask a little bit, because I know previously you and I were having some conversations, and you were talking about disposition reporting and some things that I'd never really even thought about as it relates to service BDC. And so I guess instead of very specifically, let me just let you kind of take that in the direction of, for a dealer who is watching, listening, seeing some of this, what's one of the things that they may not be thinking about in terms of reporting that comes out of service BDC work that's critical? And it doesn't have to be one thing, but one or as many things about why that's really actually a critical part of success for service BDC.
Yeah. So a couple of things that my team, the client success team, looks for is, what are the highest dispositions? We review them, the highest volume of dispositions, typically the top 3 or 4. And where we know there's a potential problem, we're going to see, as I was talking about before, declines, right? Declined work. Status checks. Status check means if we're getting loaded with those calls, it typically means the advisor is not getting back to the customer and letting them know their vehicle's available and ready after the work's been done. I know I've experienced that myself. And I know my guy at my local service department, when I go in there, I know he's jammed and busy all day long. I see him when I walk in there. He's got 3 people lined up because he's been there for 25 years. Very similar to how long I've been in the business, but he stayed in the retail side of it. So he has people that only want to work with him. But those phone calls, and I've called him before, and my calls a lot of times go to voicemail. And there's times where he doesn't call me back in a day. I know to just show up. I'm a car guy. Most people don't know that. That can significantly affect a service. So the status checks are big. We can identify those as problems. As I was telling you before, the declines, if we know that there's lots of declines, we need to find out why. Is it something our people are saying, but the majority of the time it's just because the capacity is not there? We can explain to our dealerships that, it makes sense for you to increase your capacities. And a lot of times we will hear, I just don't have the capacities. I don't have the techs. Well, you know what? It's time to hire. Start putting the hiring out there. Some dealerships are very happy with where they're at and the amount of the work they have, and they don't want to hire because they don't actually have the room in the shop to be able to handle it. So at that point, what they care about is just somebody picking the phone up and letting them know, hey, you know what? No problem. Your advisor's super busy right now. We're going to have him call you back. There's something to be said about having a live human answering that phone rather than it going to a voicemail or a voicemail box that's not set up or the wrong voicemail box. And then again, CSI is affected. And we know with certain manufacturers, CSI can mean a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that needs to absolutely be a focus. We do offer CSI as well, and it's a good piece to talk about when we're talking about reporting, because when we do make a phone call to a dealership for CSI, whether it's sales or service, we ask them the real simple question: were you completely satisfied with your recent service visit? Okay. If the customer says yes, we remind them that they're going to be getting a manufacturer survey and to please fill it out. So sometimes it's just making sure you're reminding the customer to fill it out, because one of the biggest challenges that our dealerships have on the on the CSI is that one bad survey will crush you if you don't have enough good ones. So our focus is to not only identify if there's a problem, but on top of that, remind the customer that when they did have a good experience, please tell the OEM, tell the manufacturer, because that's the one that we know this about reviews. We know this about surveys. People who are happy don't tell anybody. People that are unhappy will tell everybody they can. And that's kind of cliche, but it is the truth. So our focus is to make sure that those customers are letting the OEM know they're happy.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I get bombarded by the Toyota dealership where I take my Tundra for service. And, being in the business, and I didn't work retail. I only did that for a couple of years. So I can't even hold a candle to you. But I will tell you, I know enough about that operation. I've been working with dealers long enough that I will respond, because I know that that's a part of their business. And if they've done a good job, I want to make sure that the right people know. But the general public doesn't know that as much. And so to have a service like you guys provide, to where it's even helping, it's right. That benefit of actually doing something proactive and having something as part of your services to protect, to encourage and try to pull out the best you possibly can from your customer satisfaction index is so important. And some people, like, they've moved on. Like, I asked a group of dealers this last year in a presentation. I said, relative to your service department, is CSI not still important? I mean, it's still important, right? And it's almost like, like sometimes we get in the rut of, oh no, inventory levels are down, supply chain issues, getting through the pandemic. I mean, our industry's been through a lot in the last few years. So is it a surprise that, when they're trying to keep their eye on so many different, balls, like now you have to remind yourself of some of those foundational things that are really critical to your business? CSI is one of them.
Yeah, for some of the OEMs, the service of the CSI side of things has not been a main focus through the pandemic, but it's coming back, and it's coming back fast, and there's a lot more focus on it. So, those positive customer surveys are important to let the customer know to fill out the OEM survey, but also getting in front of the problems. So if a customer tells our team who's making that call that they weren't completely satisfied, a lot of the times just will help de-escalate that situation. Sometimes people just need to be able to tell somebody what happened, and that will help de-escalate things. They get it off their chest, and they're able to tell us what happened. Well, all of that information we gather goes immediately real time right down to the dealership, and we let the dealership know we're going to immediately have somebody contact you so we can help rectify the situation. There are times where the customer says, no, you know what, I'm okay, I'm all set. And it's just because they were able to get it off their chest and it's de-escalated. But if it's a new car, it's a newer car where they can survey, I think it's like 2014 and up for most manufacturers. What's really important is getting that customer back in front of the dealership so they can resolve the problem, not only for retention, so the customer wants to come back and not defect, but also just to make sure that they resolve the issue and the customer has a good feeling before they get that OEM survey. And they can actually say on the survey, you know what, at first the experience sucked, but you know what, they fixed it. That's my favorite kind of survey to see. Not just the great survey, but it's the one where one was fixed. That's the one that warms my heart, where our people were just allowing somebody to vent and then getting that down to the dealership and then them taking care of it. That means not only did our people do a good job, but the dealership did a great job of getting in front of the problem and resolving it. I don't think there's anything more important than that right there, other than revenue, of course.
Yeah, no, but those are great points. And not enough people, well, I should say it's possible that you might be a little bit asleep around looking at some of those finer points. And those comments on those surveys, they are, over the years, I've seen more and more where I'm like, man, I would really be paying attention to that. Somewhat recently, a Nissan dealer friend of mine shared with me something out of his CSI reporting where a customer who was saying wonderful things about them in the same breath called out another Nissan dealer by name. So this person was praising, this friend of mine, his store, like, check this out. But he mainly was sending it to me to say, look at how they're like, I've never been treated so well like this by this other dealership, and I'll never go back to them. That was in the CSI comments. I was like, dang, you might see that in a Google review, but you don't want your manufacturer seeing a customer saying, I love this dealership and I hate this dealership, and they're both your brand. Like, not good.
No. I mean, it's just, I could say it till I'm blue in the face, but focusing on that customer experience, when the customer has a better experience, your people in your store will have a better experience as well, and vice versa. As long as there's a process around everything to be set up to be done a certain way, there's going to be variations. There's going to be there's going to be certain ones that don't happen exactly the way that you want them. But as long as everybody walks away happy at the end of the day with their vehicle and with the revenue generated by the customer, then I think it's a win-win.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this actually several minutes ago.
Yeah.
Maybe towards the top. If you were to try to summarize what you think might be top, 2 or 3 reasons why dealers really need to consider a service BDC, what do you, and really maybe even from the dealers that you work with or the ones that you talk to a lot about service BDC, what are the top few driving factors where like, we got to have this?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the dealerships that come to us, it's staffing problems and then restaffing, trying to hold on to people. And not just that, you get a person in there, a warm body, who's training them? How often do dealerships, unless they're a large auto group, and sometimes they don't either, have an actual person who's coming in training. We have a group of trainers, 8 trainers that are consistently training our people. The first thing that our people go under for training, we call it empathy training. It's just understanding what the customer is going through, especially right after COVID, where they can't get right in for service. The vehicle is on the sales side. The vehicle's not available. The vehicle's $5,000 over MSRP because of chip shortages and issues. So being empathetic with that customer just off the bat is really important. Our people are all trained up on that. So a reason why a dealership would want to work with us, that's, number one, but not just on answering the phones, which we'll do, is if the phones don't get answered on the first 3 rings, we actually do backup as well. We believe that every single dealership in the country could use a backup for service, because even if it's 10 calls a month that don't get picked up, that's something that you could have a fully staffed service team at 6 to 7 days a week, pick up the phone and be able to schedule a service appointment or de-escalate a situation and get it down to the dealership so that that customer is not lost, CSI is not affected. So those are just, they kind of sound like basic reasons, right? Staffing and customer experience, not losing primary market area for your local customers. How many customers defect because, number one, they can't get in touch with somebody, they didn't pick the phone up. And that could be one day, right? Dealers may say, yep, that was just on Tuesday where we had 3 people out and so wasn't around. Well, that one Tuesday could be that 3 or 4 customers that normally schedule or call on a Tuesday because it's their day off or their one day where they have a break to make that call. And now they've lost not just that one basic oil change business, but it's all the future business because someone just got fed up and decided to go somewhere else. And the other dealership, they provided a okay experience, but they picked the phone up right away. So right there is picking the phone up is probably number one. And then everything else in between is really important on top of that. But picking up the phone is where any dealership could really use Strolid.
Yeah. Well, those are all good points. And to me, they're not trivial at all. Common themes, but those are the areas where dealers oftentimes need a lot of help. So they can just shine and do their thing. It's like, hey, staffing, whether you're trying to staff up enough salespeople, your service technicians, your service advisors, all of those things, before long, you realize, oh my goodness, like it never ends. You mentioned training in that too, right? It's like, who's going to keep getting those people trained, all of which are extremely important. Another thing I wanted to ask you, Josh, was the relationship between sales and service, especially in the BDC world. A few years ago, actually it's several years ago, I heard somebody say that they had designated a person that works in the service department but has like a crossover role with sales, and they call them a renewal manager. And I remember asking this guy, I'm like, why do you call him a renewal manager? And they said, well, it's because we have this process that we want to look at every single customer case to find out if they're in the right criteria to perhaps maybe move. And the example that they were giving was, I think, probably the most obvious one, which was, hey, I see you're in getting service on your Tundra, but that new version came out in 2022, and we could actually get you in a brand new one at a lesser payment. Like, they're always putting together. So is there a crossover type of relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's just changed a little bit. Because anybody that's in, an 18 to 20 is typically in an equity position, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their payment's going to be lower. So the way that we handle that is we'll get a list of the appointments. We pull them right from the DMS, get a list of the appointments from the day before, and we will call the customer, we'll text them and let them know. We use the terminology equity review. So we let the customer know, hey, I see you're driving that 2018. I'm calling to confirm your appointment for tomorrow. And hey, you know what? While you're here, we'd love to do an equity review on your vehicle. We'd have you come over to the service department, have one of our sales managers take a look at your vehicle, because we'd be very interested in potentially purchasing it. And we could have one of our sales associates show you all the brand new features that are in the next model in the 2023. Is there a time that would be best for you to stop over? I know you're dropping off your car, but you could always come over and see us while your car is in service. So at that point, we'll set the appointment with one of the sales managers. We'll alert them that customer's coming over from service. And you got a shot at that customer. It's the easiest appointment to set, right? You've already got that customer coming into the showroom, and it's just planting the seed. A lot of times we're not going to set the appointment, but while that customer's there potentially waiting or dropping their car off, waiting for a shuttle to get out of there, or waiting for a loaner car, they're moseying on over to the sales department, and they'll say, hey, I was told to ask for John, the sales manager. I might be able to have my car looked at. And now you have a customer opportunity in your showroom. So a lot of times it's just planting the seed. It's just like anything. It's like calling on a lead that may never respond to you. As long as you're leaving a good voicemail, as long as you're sending emails, communicating with them regular, a lot of times they're going to walk right into the store because you've provided good customer experience. You've responded quickly. You've left messages letting them know who you are, where you're from, and now there's an opportunity in the showroom. So that's a really important part of what we've started doing recently. Help drive traffic to the showroom, because your best leads are already your current customers, which again sounds cliche, but how many dealerships are actually calling those customers the day before and sending a text message offering for them to come in to do an equity review, which I think is the right terminology, not over-promising that they're going to come in for their VIP appointment and get into a payment that's $200 lower, because that's kind of a thing of the past. There's certain situations that can happen, but we just try and set it up where we can have the customer come in and have the evaluation done, have them fall in love with the new vehicle that they're looking at, or maybe pre-owned, and take a good piece of inventory in too. That's a huge win as well.
That is huge. A question, follow up on that. I'm a dealer, and that sounds really good. Do I need to be working with you guys as a sales BDC as well?
No, but it definitely helps when you have the program set up, because we want to really focus on installing the process for the customer experience. We have stores that we're working with the service department and the sales department. We have stores that we're just working with the service department where we're bringing those customers over. It's just really important for us to roll it out properly to make sure if we are sending that customer over, that someone is actually going to reciprocate and say, hey, you know what? I have your information right here. Why don't you pull your car around, or I'll actually go over to service while you're taking your shuttle back home or to work. We'll have it looked at. And when you come back, just come see me. We'll do a full equity review, go over everything, and potentially see what we can do for you.
Yeah, I love that synergy, but that makes so much sense. And you've mentioned on the episode that the customer experience, right? We're kind of beating that drum, but I mean, does it not make all the sense in the world when you're trying to provide a great customer experience to be helping people understand? I love the equity review. Hey, let's kind of figure out where you're at there. But then presenting all these options. That, I mean, it goes to, Vinny has talked about on episodes of the Customer Lifecycle Center. These are points around that, that
Right.
center, if you will, of making all these things work. And it includes, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, here's some great opportunities that you may want to take advantage of. And you're going to see them, and they can be, you can highlight them and give them the importance that they deserve when you have, that type of service in play.
Yep.
It's huge.
Exactly.
Last thing I want to ask you about, and we'll bring this kind of thing to a parking spot, is on, just continually trying to make everything within the dealership better. And in the last couple of years, especially, we've heard more and more about retention. Whether people are talking about the customer retention or the service retention, keeping people there. I think that the service department plays such a massive role here because I don't think the data, NADA themselves talk about how service advisors on average are responsible for more gross profit into a dealership than your best salespeople. They're responsible for making more of an impression, meaning they're tied more to people who will become loyal or want to do business with you, customer experience, because they talk to more customers than your salespeople do, right? There's all of these points of data around the importance of the service department, and it's not, I don't think, talked about enough. So I want to get your kind of closing thoughts on the episode around continually improving the dealership, but the role that the service department plays in all of that, and just some closing thoughts on that.
Yeah. So my thought is just like my experience when I was getting the tires. Keep your advisors focus on the customer in front of them, right? Following up, they can do follow-up. If they can't do the follow-up, we can always help, but just really focusing on that customer in front of you, giving them all of your undivided attention, making sure that they're not picking the phone up in the middle of working with a customer. Also, just the fact that a customer can hear all the phones ringing, park on line 5, right? Customers hear all that. It's loud. It should be a really comfortable experience when the customer walks into the store. It's really important that customer is focused on by the advisor when they're physically there. And we can help that happen by having the phones picked up regularly. And I keep saying that, and it sounds like the very basic stuff, but it doesn't happen on the regular out there. Some places, yes, but not regularly, where the customer is just always looking around like I was, and just looking at and seeing this is not the best customer experience. And they will quietly sometimes defect and go somewhere else if they feel that.
I love that. That's a great place to end this, Josh. It certainly made me think of a couple of other real life stories that I want to tell about service, but I'm going to save it because we got to do another episode on service BDC. Yeah. Especially at the customer service level. You share a lot of great points, and this has been extremely helpful. And I think that the audience is going to agree that we probably need to talk a little bit more about service BDC. So although we found a great place to park this episode, I will tell the audience, hey, if you like it, you love it, or none of the above, we'd still love to hear from you. This is the Dealer Insights podcast. It gets better when you share some comments, questions, and feedback, even recommendations. So drop them in the comments section below, especially if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching any of the clips that we cut from YouTube. But you can also email us. You can do that at info at Strolid, STROLID.com. Until then, stay strong and solid, and you'll never miss. Thanks, Josh.
Bye.